So I'm going to talk a bit about data-driven engagement, and it's going to be fairly short because I'm not going to steal Stein's thunder or Jan Helge's thunder because they're going to actually demonstrate in practice some of the things I'm talking about. But I don't know if anybody of you here have watched a lot of Star Trek, but basically in all those Star Trek episodes, what Captain Jean-Luc Picard always very often ends with is engage. And that's really what you want to do also with users if you are running in a consumer service. And if you link this to some of the things that yesterday's keynote speaker, John Payton, said, he mentioned a couple of things that I think build up under the purpose of, or the topic of data-driven engagement. First, he said that audiences are very rapidly being fragmented. And to me, that says that it makes it increasingly futile to treat large groups of users as a group. You really, things are getting so fragmented that basically every user is becoming their own group. So you need to look at things that are truly individualized on a per-person basis, on a per-user basis. So that means that services are increasingly being personalized to the level of you as an individual. Another thing he said was that he thought that for services or personalization services built on data, we're just getting started. So I think that implies that new services, new personalized services being built on data will appear that we today don't really know what are. So if we have this similar conference 3 years from now, a lot of new use cases will have appeared. I'm pretty certain of that. And all those use cases will be built on the premise of having this data available, that you actually have data on individual users. In many ways, data-driven engagement more or less equals personalization when you reduce it to that. If you see that personalized services, very often they yield increased engagement. There are a lot of examples being mentioned yesterday and also earlier today on actually quantifying this. But generally, the more personalized services are, the more people respond, the more engaged they become, and so on. It's fairly common sense. But I think a very important part here is that all that engagement has to be driven by empirical data. Data that you actually observe, data that you collect, that you massage, and that you, in a sense, learn from. So that the services are much more adapted to you as an individual. It's not like you just, personalization consists of, do you want your background to be red or blue? It's actually on what you've done historically. Personalization services can also be, you can look in the back mirror and you can say, what did I do yesterday? And you can build fairly good services on that. But the more you can capitalize on the moment, what you're actually doing right now, the shorter the time span that you have from you've observed somebody do something till you can actually react on that, the better. And you actually have, if you come to a lot of the examples shown in graphs today and yesterday, they basically say that, okay, very often you have users that you see fairly rarely, but when they're there, they have a number of page views, and if you can't capitalize on what they're doing now, you have their attention right now. You might not see them again in a few days, but right now you have them there. You need to capitalize on that. So real time, when you hear the word real time, etc., that's really what that means. That you can actually capitalize much better on the opportunity of the moment. And that's a good fit for the CSense platform. We capture behavioral data. We massage it into something meaningful. And we allow that data to be used to realize various types of applications. And my claim is that the CSense platform is a lot more than the applications that we currently surface. Typically, and a lot of the examples have been shown, and we have dedicated applications for doing content recommendations. Typically use them for news sites. And we have very good ad platforms for doing very good various ways of doing targeted or personalized advertisements and promotions and offers. And there's a whole room of people downstairs, I guess, looking at the latter two. We've seen some examples today and yesterday from Winnipeg Free Press and others on news article recommendations. And those are sort of the traditional ways of personalizing things for publishers. So when I claim that the CSense platform is a lot more than the applications that we surface, this is one way of presenting the CSense platform. It's a bit, so you have the applications over here that can actually use the data, and you have the capturing of the data on that side, and you have something in between, which bridges the two. So I want to talk a little bit more about this part, not so much about the applications. So this is the PowerPoint way of presenting the platform. This is the more techie way, I guess. When you think of it, what the platform does, it monitors in real time how users interact with stuff. Content, news articles typically, but it doesn't have to be. So there's a big graph, basically, where you have users and content items, and then we have events that link the two. And this is a big bipartite graph, and you can annotate both content items, or content profiles, as we call them in the system. You can have user profiles, you can annotate those with key value pairs, and you can also annotate individual events with key value pairs. All of this is extensible. So what the system does is keep track of all of this in real time and allows you to query this graph in very, very flexible and powerful ways. You can have queries that combine any kind of property on users, events, and content, and you can use that to define segments. You can use that to query, get real-time information about a given user, and so on. But content doesn't have to be news articles. They can just be, you can think of them as objects that people consume somehow or interact with. Events doesn't have to be page view events. There are a lot of other types of events. Clicks, impressions, you can think of interactions with, I don't know, video players was an example. So you have a lot of different types of events which aren't necessarily page view events. So we have in the system a way of flexibly annotating events and having sub-events so that you can tie these up to in hierarchies, so that you can have a page view event which, say, pulls up a video player, and then you can have various sub-events on that page view where you click around on the video player and capture that information and be able to join it back with information from the page view. And also, users, they can really be users. Traditionally, a user is a device or a client that the system sees. But as you saw perhaps yesterday in some of the advertising demos, by being able to link different user profiles together, we can treat them as the same logical users, even though they're from initially, we think there might be different people on different devices. And then we link them, we actually know that they're users. That two different devices belong to the same user. And that's a really powerful concept, because that allows us to treat people on one platform, and what you do over here can actually be reflected over here on a different device in a different setting. So if you think of it as sort of in a more abstract way, the platform is actually very, very powerful, and it allows you to build applications for which we currently have no dedicated applications for. It allows you to integrate with other systems and make those systems richer, smarter, more intelligent, and it allows you to add this to other types of things than say, advertisements on the web or news article recommendations. So these are some examples that have been talked about today and yesterday, where we're really integrating the engine and the power of keeping track of how users consume content or objects in real time and use that to add on more intelligence. So you can personalize emails. You can integrate with email marketing systems. Jan Helge very shortly will talk about product recommendations, where news articles are not necessarily news articles, but they're products with properties. You can monitor how these are consumed, etc. You have various types of applications, obviously. It doesn't have to be things that have to do with news. It could be, but they could equally well be games or something. Something where you have an end user that interacts with your applications. Paywalls was an example yesterday. And Internet of Things is a big buzzword. And Stein, he's here somewhere, I think. He'll be talking more about this later today also in another session. But basically in that world, it's not users clicking on web pages that generate events. It's typically interactions with sensors. People generate those events or trigger them by walking across a location where a beacon is present or something like that. So basically the platform and all the events aren't page view events, they're sensor events. And we keep track then in real time of how all of this fits together. Where are people? Can you build profiles based on historical events that they have triggered? So the platform itself is extremely powerful and flexible, and I think it's a limitation we might impose on ourselves if we just think of it in terms of the applications that we surface today. It has the potential to basically consume any kind of service where end users consume data by personalizing it. And Jan Helge and Stein will show examples of that in demos later today. When thinking of this, you can sort of also think of where does the data come from? Data can be captured directly. It could be on the web from a client or on a server. Or also in non-web settings, for example, as I mentioned, by sensors or applications sending us the various types of events. Also in places where we cannot capture the data directly, but where very often where we can fold in data after the fact by supplying it as what we in our system call external data, which is typically first or third-party data. For example, you might not be able to capture that somebody bought something in a partner store until the day after where they supply you with the data. You can fold that in. So some of the data can be captured directly, and some of it can come after the fact. A challenge here is what I guess John Payton called as off-platform consumption in his keynote yesterday, and that's a big challenge because basically there might appear stuff where your content is consumed, but where you have no knowledge about how it's consumed. And aggregate reports aren't really all that great because you need data on individuals. The idea of being able to reach people in different locations and have on different devices based on linking together user profiles is actually also very powerful because applications of this, and it might be like user impression capping in advertising or something like that. But if you think of it, what it really allows you to do is that something that you do in one location can be utilized and capitalized on in an entirely different place later on. And you can have something that follows you around in an intelligent way. And that is actually building applications on top of that concept. I don't think we necessarily know what all those applications are. As I started out by saying, I think you are a great source of coming up with a lot of innovation there. You have the use cases, we have the technology, and very often we end up building very good solutions together by marrying the two. Just very quickly summarizing, personalized services are going to become much more pervasive. and increasingly advanced as well. A lot of the personalization that you see today is really simple. For example, if you come from the US and you open up your Twitter feed, the personalization might now mean that you see Norwegian ads. And that's not great. And that's going to be, that type of logic is going to become increasingly advanced. And new types of personalized services will appear. Not just services, but also, I think, publishers sitting on data that they can capitalize somehow by exposing it to partners, exposing it to selected third parties, and make use of it that way. Services that have to do with the use of data, not necessarily as an end-user service, is also going to appear, I think. Jan Helge, later on, is going to show a lot of demonstrations around how this works, how it's actually used for, well, e-commerce in particular. Stein will talk a bit about using this in the world of Internet of Things and visualizing all of this data. And so I encourage you to see those presentations from those two. And also I think Ragnar showed a lot of examples of how all of this could be used. Scripting inside of PowerPoint. Didn't think of that. That's really the power of having a platform with a lot of APIs. I think what's in store for the coming years is a lot of excitement, a lot of uses of all of this that we haven't seen yet. You're the innovators here together with us. So, thanks.